I want to have to record this thought while it's fresh on my mind. In that, you always hear creationists discuss or ask people who believe in the scientific fact of evolution, why don't we see crocoducks? Or why doesn't a monkey have a human baby? And they try to put holes in the arguments against evolution because it's in contradiction to a ancient book called the Bible and the story that it has. I think that evolutionists, people who accept evolution and natural selection as a fact or as the best explanation, or at least natural selection, the theory of natural selection, and when I say theory, I mean that it's the best explanation of the available evidence that we have, and it gives the most precise. It's predictable. It falls within the guidelines of science, and it shows how, through the brilliance of Charles Darwin, how organisms mutate and replace other organisms over time. And getting back to my point is that you hear the Kirk Camerons and Ray Comforts from The Way of the Master and other apologists always throw up in people who believe in the evidence that is presented, that is factual, that is proven, that we don't see crocoducks, we don't see monkeys having human babies. Why don't we see these things? Well, we need to reverse the question on the questioner and ask them, well, Mr. Way of the Master or Mr. Apologist, why don't we see human beings and animals and other species being formed out of dust, out of the waters, according to the first and second chapters of Genesis? Why don't we see these species now being formed just like the Bible says it is formed? Your theory, if you want to call it a theory, does not give an explanation other than God did it. And that doesn't explain a thing. But you want to question a person who looks at the available evidence. A guy comes up 150 years ago with a reasonable explanation based on the evidence that says, well, nature, just like human beings, through when we domesticated animals and different things, selected for different traits, artificial selection versus natural selection. Just like when we domesticated the wolf, and now it's the different variety of dogs that we have today. Nature did it itself, just like we do it or did it for thousands of years, domesticating cattle, sheep, and other animals. And so nature just did it on a grander scale. It selected for features that would help the species adapt to the environment, not the other way around. The environment did not adapt to us. We adapted to our environments over millions and billions of years. And so, Mr. Creationist, why don't we see people being formed out of the dust of the ground and being breathed into? Huh? Won't you answer that? Instead of saying, why don't we see crocoducks, why don't we see fully formed human beings? Why does a woman go through 9 months of labor, 9 months of development? Why does a fetus go through 9 months of development over time? Why doesn't a human being come out fully developed? You know, since you were saved, that we're now under grace and that Jesus Christ is the solution to the human condition, and that his sacrifice reconciled us back to God. Therefore, we are in the same standing man was prior to the fall. That is the Christian belief, that mankind is now reconciled, or we're in the same standing that we had prior to the fall. A lot of people, if you accept that man fell, and therefore Jesus paid for the falling of man, therefore we are reconciled, or that fall has been paid for. Why hasn't things changed back to the way they were prior to the fall of man, if this is true? Why does a woman, why is the so-called curse still on the woman to endure labor, and for mankind to work by the sweat of his brow? Why hasn't that changed back to the way things were prior to the fall, if the fall has been paid for? So that women don't have to go through labor, people just now could pop up out of the dust of the ground, you know? So instead of you having to defend a quackaduck, throw the argument back on the ridiculousness of their own argument. Why don't we see fully formed humans popping out of the ground?